Hello and welcome to AXSChat. We're delighted to have Bruce Van Horn with us today as our guest. Bruce is a writer, motivational speaker, and life coach, amongst other things, and a marathon runner too. So, got a lot to talk about. Really a lot to learn from Bruce. I'm really glad to have you here. I know Debra speaks very highly of you, so welcome. Can you tell us a bit about what you do and what brought you to come and speak with Debra?
Sure, I would love to do that. And thank you for having me, first of all. It's a pleasure and an honor to be able to participate with you guys in the awesome, literally life-changing work that you all do. So, goodness, so what do I do now? I write, I speak, I do a podcast called Life is a Marathon, 3 days a week. And I've been doing that for a little over a year. Just recorded my 220th episode. It's listened to in 194 countries around the world, over 1 million downloads. Um, but it has absolutely nothing to do with marathon running. It's just the metaphor that life is a marathon. And while I do run marathons literally, a lot can happen over the course of a marathon, and there's a lot of emotional ups and downs, a lot of physical changes can happen, so it really is that idea of staying in life for the long haul. And what brought me to that place was really when I was 42 years old. I was at a place emotionally where I was not doing well in my marathon of life. I had suffered and to say suffered is language that I will use to indicate where I was at the time. I had suffered. I had been the victim of multiple tragedies. I had filed bankruptcy 2 times, one after the failure of a business, and then one after having a monstrous amount of financial debt. After the death of my daughter in the year 2000. I was in a career I was not happy in. I was just totally unfulfilled. I was a miserable person, and I literally was just going through the motion, living one day to the next, hoping that today, let's not let something bad happen. Wasn't expecting anything good to happen, but was just hoping another tragedy wouldn't befall me. And then if something did happen to me that was nice, I certainly would not allow myself to celebrate it because I was convinced it would be short-lived. Just because that's just where I was. I was just
Okay.
expecting the worst from life. And something had to radically change in my life, and something did. So that when I was 42 years old, so in the fall of 2005, spring of 2006 is really where I made some very intentional changes in my life. I had to change my life, or I did not think that life was going to be worth living any further, which led me to a personal growth journey that I traveled on for several years, and will continue to grow and learn and realize that on any given point we are nowhere near have we reached our human potential or what we were put on this planet to do. So there's a really short, kind of vague answer to your question.
No, that's okay. I mean, I'm at that point now in terms of age. I'm
Okay,
that age now, but I hit rock bottom a fair bit earlier in terms
sure.
so I think one of the things that people often don't talk about and that we like to talk about on Access Chat is mental health issues. It's
Absolutely.
something that people don't often feel comfortable about admitting.
Sure.
We've had a couple of great Access Chats where people have talked about their vulnerabilities, and it's something that we're very glad when people do open up, because actually the people that are talking about their mental health issues are often the strongest and the great, have great things to share with us and lead. Deborah, I know you're queued up with a question, so I'm going to hand over.
Well, it was Bruce and I live in the same area, and we have known each other on social media for years. And I actually have bought and studied one of Bruce's books, which I love. I love and the title is Bruce, No Worries. I forget the exact.
Worry No More.
Worry No More. Thank you. And I. You know, life will sometimes batter us, and it was interesting when I went to lunch with Bruce last week and heard part of his story, and it's quite a story, and I was thinking, and I knew that he would add a lot of value to our AXSChat conversations, because the reality is these are the things that we're trying to get society to change the mind overall about the value that people with disabilities bring to the workforce, to society in general. And we all have things that happen to us. We all have abilities. We all have disabilities. We all have tragedies. I like what you say, Bruce, that life is a marathon, because it is. And so I thought, and I liked the point that Neil brought up, and that we've had some of our best guests are the ones that can really talk about how life has taken them and shaken them up. I remember we had an ex-police officer on here that was really traumatized by post-traumatic stress disorder multiple times when he was actually, the people tried to kill him. So it's a really big topic, and I think it's a very powerful topic. And I think the work that you do, Bruce, can really. I know that for me it's been very meaningful, because I try really hard to live my best life, but I'm still living my life in a human body, and with all the frailness and the mistakes and everything that goes with that. And as we are trying to change the perception of what human potential is, I think you being in this conversation is very powerful. And so if you can just speak a little bit to that, just like you said before, tapping into the human potential.
Yeah, I realized at some point during the process of my, just coming out of this total victim mode trance that I've been in for most of my life, and it makes, looking back over the years, it makes perfect sense for me to ultimately come around to this, because all I ever wanted to be when I was a teenager was a writer. And so I was always very involved in the story process. And it's what I studied in university and did very well, and then got completely sidetracked by a different corporate career. But to come back to it, I like to use this analogy. I mean, things happen to us that are beyond our control, right? But very often the biggest disabilities, if you will, I'll just use that word for a moment. The largest disabilities that we have are self-imposed. And they're imposed on us by the story, the narrative that we are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, writing inside our head about who we are, about what the world is, about our worthiness, about our capabilities or inabilities, about what people think of us. So we're constantly writing this narrative. And so we can take something like a natural disaster. So let's either take a flood or an earthquake that happens in a geographic area where everybody loses their home. So the houses either get washed away in a flood or completely devastated by a hurricane. So the tragedy that befalls the community is not a respecter of wealth or any of these other things. So everybody, in a sense, suffers the same loss. And how is it that some people will declare that their life is over? Many will commit suicide. Many will just live in the rubble, if you will, of their lives and never move on after that. Where others will pick up the pieces, rebuild, and in most cases rebuild and live a life better than, emotionally better, in many cases, than they were living previously. So what often happens in our world is we allow the events that happen to us to define who and what we are, to define our abilities, how far we can go in life. So we have this events equals outcome mentality. This thing happened to me, therefore I am fill in the blank. But if some people can take that event and have a different outcome, it must not be the event. It must be the response to the event. And so the formula is actually the event plus our response to the event is what produces the outcome. And the response is that story that we tell ourselves. And what has to happen is that we realize that basically the only thing really standing between us and what we want in life is the story that we tell ourselves about what's possible, our belief about what can or can't happen, who will or will not support me in getting what I want. If we've been beaten down by life, we start to assume that the answer from other people, that the answer from God or whatever a faith system is, from the universe, if we will, we assume the answer is no. And so we stop asking. We stop thinking that it's even remotely possible. But yet if we can switch that around and start telling a story and start making a different assumption. I didn't know you, Debra, when we agreed to, I mean, personally, I didn't know, I had an idea of what your personality would be like through our social media interactions. But very often people are different in person than they are on social media, sadly. So I could have told myself a story that said, this isn't going to be a good meeting, I don't think I'm going to like her or whatever, and we do these things, we make these prejudgments. I prejudged in advance that it was going to be an amazing, awesome, fun, mutually worthwhile experience. And I believe that prejudgment of mine, the story that I told myself in advance of our meeting, had a lot to do with how our meeting actually went, because it's the type of energy I showed up with. I have a feeling you had pretty much the same storyline going on in your head, because that was the energy that you showed up with. So the story that we tell ourselves is really what defines who and where we go. Because if we are not excited about the prospects, we're not going to take, it ultimately takes action to change our lives. Thinking great things about having lunch with Debra is one thing, but getting in the car and driving to the restaurant is the action behind it. But if I don't think it's going to be a worthwhile experience, I'm probably going to cancel on you. I won't take the action to drive. And so this is what it is. Where our thoughts are what produce our influence our behaviors. So if we want to change our lives, it's not so much, we can change our behaviors for a brief period of time, but if we don't have an underlying belief system to support those new behaviors, it's why so many resolutions just don't work. Because we think that we can just go to the gym and start, working out. But if we believe that we are out of weight or out of shape and overweight, and that's our self-image, we're not going to stay with it to actually change that. So we have to change our self-image. We have to change our story first. And then that's largely the work that I do, is to help people with this restoring process of their life.
So I think this is really interesting. A couple of points, and then I know Antonio's got some questions too. You touched on the idea that people aren't necessarily the same as their social media selves. project a lot on social media. People run, people curate their lives, and so
Yes.
what we've created now is these bubbles of perfection, if you like. You know, everybody else's life is perfect.
Right.
Why is mine so imperfect? Why is
Yes.
it that I don't have these things? What's hidden away is all of the crap that everyone else is
Right.
going through in their lives too. They don't tend to put that online because people want to portray their strengths and their positivity. Some people are more open and honest about some of the things, but in general, there is this tendency towards putting up a created life rather than the one that you're actually living. So I think that
Yes.
that can have an adverse effect on some people. Um, and also I'm mindful of what you're saying in terms of mindset. So if you decide that you're not going to enjoy something, you won't.
Right.
You know, you'll turn up to the party, you'll sulk, you'll find the people boring, you'll be itchy to go home, and you'll come back and you'll not enjoy it. And the same in all sorts of areas. Um, and again, it's coming on to this idea of marathon again. So along with Debra and Antonio, we believe that we can change the world. We're stupidly ambitious, maybe, that we think that we can create change at a really top level and really change how people's perceptions are and everything else. And so we're definitely glass half full people, and I think that helps. We're also mindful that we're not going to change it overnight.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've learned, which has helped me, is patience.
Right.
Because patience is really key to this. Because
Yes.
yes, you can be optimistic, but you're going to get lots of knockbacks,
Yeah.
and those knockbacks could take you right off course.
I like the
If it
glass.
wasn't for the patience and perseverance, and I know Deborah's the same. You know, Deborah's had plenty of tough things happen
Yeah.
and had to put up with an awful lot in life. But it's, Deborah's one of the most positive people I know. So yeah, sorry to praise you on camera, Deborah, but I have
Yeah,
to do it sometime.
I'll take it.
Take it wherever you get it.
That's right. That's right.
So it's really important that people understand the value of perseverance. So I think that the fact that you're talking about that is really key. Now I'll shut up and let Antonio ask his questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Neil. No, after that, over time, no, one of the most magnificent things that I found in social media and the way how people connect today is I had the chance to meet strangers that I never met face to face, build interesting relationships, sometimes just for small projects, and we're able to establish a level of trust that sometimes I question, did I ever establish that with people that I've met face to face? So I was able to have amazing things, and even today I was able to create those relationships, and even if we don't collaborate in the similar projects, people, if you want to be present on someone's life, you can actually do it without being there permanently. But you are part of that network of people. You are able to go and search and let me listen. What this my friend is saying. Let me try to understand what he's doing. Let's see if I can do something to support him without
Mm.
him having me asking me for something. You just go there and try to help the person without waiting to receive anything back. So in this world of social, I was able to somehow be rewarded by being part of a network of a group of people that was able to give me uh, all this. And then I found that that the fact that you have some level of resilience can help you in order not only to help you in your own projects, but also to pass that energy to other people who somehow are not that confident in relation that if they're going to achieve something and if what they're going to achieve is going to be actually be successful because they don't know where the journey is going to be. And if you're able to support them and try to pass to them a little bit of your own journey, that will help them to bring a little bit more confidence. The three of us, we met just by by chance. There was no plan, nothing happened. It was just our networks were able to bring us all together and make possible what we are doing here today.
I totally agree. The world of the internet just connects us, and ultimately there is the only perception or the only distance between us is a perceived difference anyway. I do believe that everything is energy, and it's why we can be thinking about a person and then the phone rings and it's that person that we were thinking of. There was already that connection between us, and it happens more times than not. I like the phrase that miracles are the norm rather than the rare occasion. It's just that our radar is not attuned to be on the lookout for them. But yeah, my world, with the social media following that I have, has connected me with so many people throughout the world, many of whom have really become very good friends.
I've had I've had that same experience. Go ahead, Neil. Did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I think it's the same for me. Social media for me has given me rich friendships that you connect on a level, and on an intellectual level. So you go and find people that you're connecting with ideas. You're connecting on causes and passions and everything else. Now, I'm not saying that you want to necessarily perpetuate a filter bubble, because you should follow people that you don't necessarily agree with too. But I've got questioned whether or not these friendships were real, whether these connections were as strong as a face-to-face. Absolutely, they are. Face-to-face meetings are nice. I'd like to, meet people that I'm friends with on social media face-to-face as well. But it's not the end of the world if I don't, because these days you've got video conferencing, you've got the whole sort of support network that these people bring to you is really quite strong, and I think that if you've connected mentally and philosophically, you don't need that physical meeting. And it was a little discussion on a Twitter chat like we hold for AXSChat, where I was debating this, and in the end I said, well, hold on a sec, didn't the Victorians maintain friendships by writing letters?
Mm-hmm.
We're only doing the same kind of thing.
Right.
Just a little faster.
Oh yeah, it's more immediate.
Yeah, a lot of people. Now I'm interrupting you, Antonio. Go ahead.
Now, what I'm going to ask you is, you have the chance to you were mentioning before that you were recording a podcast previously, and then you do that on a regular basis. Now, when you are connecting with people, what are you trying to achieve? You are trying to understand them. You are trying to learn from them. What type of energy are you trying to, see around the space where they move on?
My goal in interacting, I have a couple different goals. First and foremost is that all parties involved enjoy the interaction. So there's no point in the three of us being on this call if none of us want to be here. And so I bring with it the type of energy that says, all right, I want to do whatever is possible in a genuine, non-manipulative way, that when this event is over, everybody says, you know what, that was worthwhile. I'd like to interact with these people again in the future. And then what I really want to do is just try to be present for people. And in the world of life coaching, I don't follow a particular canned methodology for helping people. It's very much a personalized thing, because the journey that you are on is different than the journey that everybody else is on. And so for me to try to get you to fit into, I have this formula for helping people. I don't. I want to be present to you and try to use my life experiences in a way that will help you with your life experiences. And if I feel like my life experiences don't give me a lot of insight to yours, then I'm not going to try to be something to you that I'm not. So those are my first and foremost ideas. But again, the overwhelming majority of work that I do, I will get people come to me for life coaching, and they may have an agenda. They have, well, this is what I need you to help me with, Bruce. And I'm like, okay, great. Why do you need help with that? And they'll tell me, and I'll say, okay, well, why is that? And ultimately, when I ask enough whys, then we get to the real story. And ultimately, it winds up helping people, with the story and their limiting beliefs or what it is. Now, I don't do the type of, I'm not a Sigmund Freud or a Jungian psychologist, but a lot of it just has to do with we had these things happen to us, and this is how I interpreted it. And so that I think that's the general answer to your question about how I show up, how do I interact with people. I want to be as helpful to you as I possibly can to help you live. The phrase that I use is to help you be the fullest expression of who you were created to be. Not everybody is a rocket scientist. Not everybody is a great athlete. But everybody was created for a purpose. And my job is to try to help you figure that out.
So, Bruce, whenever we bringing it, taking this a little bit more specifically for people with disabilities, one thing that the three of us are trying to do with AXSChat is we're really trying to challenge society's belief about the value that people with disabilities bring to every aspect of society. Certainly, we talk a lot about the workforce and the need to make sure that all internet communication and technology is fully accessible. But when it's interesting that when our daughter Sarah was born with Down syndrome, we were, when the doctors were telling us about what her life was going to be like, it was such a tragic, dark prediction. And of course, we weren't going to have any part of that because she really adds a lot of joy in our lives, in her own life, and in other people's lives. And so, how do we, continue, to change people's minds in society about what people with disabilities can bring to, to all of the conversations?
Well, I think that it's partly getting people to slow down and look at people as people rather than as units of production, right? Everybody, there are. I was having this conversation with my oldest son, and while I don't usually have political conversations, he was quite upset about the role of large corporations, putting huge amounts of money into the pockets of politicians. And I said, the reality is that there is no such thing as a corporation. Corporations do not exist.
Right.
There are only groups of people. Okay? And so a corporation simply reflects the personalities, the values of its leadership. And so that's really what it boils down to. I had early in my career, I didn't appreciate it really at the time, but I had a manager. He hired me for a specific job, and the bottom line is I was really not good at all at that job. I guess during the job interview I convinced him that I would be, but it became very quickly apparent that I was not good at that. Yet, he paid enough attention to how I interacted with the other employees, what things, what types of conversations was I having, or what was I doing, and he noticed my energy levels changing. And he said, Bruce, you're lousy at this type of sales, but you know what? I think you'd be great in our marketing department. And so while he hired me for one job, and he said, he could have said, that's the job I've hired you for. If you can't do that job, then you need to leave and I'll find somebody who can. He took the time to say, you know what? You're not great at this job that I hired you for, but I see in you things that we need over here. So he was committed to me as a person, and he was committed to using me in a way that not only benefited me, but also benefited the company. And it wound up being a great move. And so I think that if we can get people to look at people as people, everybody has gifts. Not everybody is an automaton. Right? So I have 2 boys. Many of you have multiple children probably. Each one is different. Each one has skills. I know that I can have certain conversations with one of my sons that you just don't flow naturally with the other son. But with this son, I can talk about these things, and that lights him up. And where his brother's like, I have no idea why he's interested in that. And this other brother says, well, I have no idea why you're interested. But each one of them has their gifts. And so while people may have physical challenges, physical differences, or emotional differences, or whatever these disabilities are, it doesn't mean that they are not valuable, first of all. And it's tapping into that value, and everybody has gifts. I know some just amazingly gifted people who can't do the things physically that I can do, but my goodness, they can do math in their head that I couldn't do on a calculator. So it's about taking the time to figure that out. And I've had to do it in my own parenting. When I took the time to figure out, all right, this is the language that my boys speak. And each of them speaks a different language. And so when I stopped expecting them to speak to me the way I like to be spoken to, or the way that I get, but I figured out in order to have this great relationship with my sons, I needed to learn how to speak their language. And when I started speaking their language, they both responded, and so our relationship, therefore, is a lot better. So I think that is the key to getting people who are employing, so the employers is not just looking at, I don't know, whatever their models are, and start looking at people.
Well said, well said. Neil?
Absolutely. I think this chimes in with the whole idea that we believe firmly in it, and that's the social model of disability, that it's people's attitudes rather than people's impairments that really truly disabling. So
Right.
yeah, the attitude is key. And I've been in those jobs too, where just totally unsuited, and it's great and really frees you up when you suddenly find actually this is what you're meant to be doing. This is where you have your strength. It changes your perspective on life. It's much happier. So
there's a great quote that I'd like to share with you. Okay. It's actually Khalil Gibran. I don't know if you've ever read anything by Khalil Gibran, but especially for people with the disabilities, and it could be any of us. I mean, how many people do we know show up every day to their job and they hate their job, and they do their work, and they just do barely enough to get by? It has absolutely nothing to do with the job. It has everything to do with what's inside them. And so Khalil Gibran says, work is love made visible. How we do anything has nothing to do with the doing of the thing. It has everything to do with what is inside us. And so if we have this attitude, like I'm downtrodden, nobody appreciates me or whatever, at the core of that is this belief that sort of agrees with that. And so we see ourselves as just barely enough to get by. And so that's the type of work that we do. But if we have this amazing love for ourselves and who and what we are, and just the fact that we're alive on this planet, I used to be a glass is half empty guy. Then I became a glass is half full guy. Now I am amazingly grateful that I have a glass and that there's something in it. I'm grateful for the glass itself.
Well, you can always refill it.
Right. Right, so yeah, so I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just want to throw that Khalil Gibran quote out there because, it's how we do anything is how we do everything.
Yeah.
Well said.
Excellent. We're at the end of our half hour, so it flew by. It's been a real pleasure talking with you.
Likewise.
Looking forward to our chat on Twitter. So thank you very much, Bruce Van Horn.
Thank you, Bruce, and for highlighting how important it is for us to understand the other. So it's very important. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce.
My pleasure.
Bye bye.